and welcome. We are piloting, so apologies if we kept you waiting, but we finally are with you. I hope so. And first of all, let me tell you what this all is. Now, what is this event we are in? My name is Pavel Luksha. I am the co-founder of Global Education Futures, and Global Education Futures is an international initiative exploring the trends that are shaping our education and that are transforming the paradigm. So we are the group of thinkers and practitioners that came together several years ago to recognizing that education is dramatically underutilized in our society. Education has a potential to be a vehicle for intentional social evolution. We as a humanity now face a massive crisis. Everybody talks about climate crisis, the biodiversity loss, inequality crisis, risks of a third world war, and many other things. So we are really rushing into this complexity of challenges that are jeopardizing our collective future and future of our children. And how to avoid it, we often leave it to politicians, but we recognize more and more that it's rooted in the behavior of every person on this planet. So actually, to learn new things, to start thinking differently, we need to act to begin learning collectively in a new way. And this is what education does. It creates the space where such learning can happen. So that's the premise with which our Global Education Futures work has started. We conducted many sessions around the world, bringing different thought leaders together, writing reports, but we know it's not enough. We know it's time to really begin catalyzing change, and many of our friends and partners are already building movements, networks, ecosystems to do that. And we feel that we can also play our role. So one of our projects that we are beginning today is to start online sessions, talks, where teachers and practitioners around the globe can meet some people that I can definitely call role models, inspiring leaders in transformation of education, who can show us the path into the future, and with whom we can learn together, and maybe getting inspired by them also start to do things differently. So this is the idea of Jeff Talks, and welcome to the first Jeff Talk. I will now pass to my colleague Alexander Laszlo, and then we will introduce our honored guest, who is the first speaker, Dina Buchbinder, but let's wait just 2 more minutes for that. Alexander, over to you.
I'll be brief because we really want to hear from Dina here, and this is so exciting. What a lovely opportunity for us to be in conversation about the way we approach the future, really. This is we are a learning species. As they say, learning is the way humans evolve, and evolution is the way the universe learns. So we're part of this narrative. What is this narrative? What is this story? How does it need to change? That's what that's what we explore in Global Education Futures. And we have with us today Dina Buchbinder, who is going to be helping us explore this area in conversation with us, sharing us with some of her life path and ways, and sharing us exactly what's called education for sharing. We also have a couple of other members with us here. We have Shiv Shukla, who's based in Global Education Futures India. And we have Pim van Geest, who is managing all of the controls. He really is the master puppeteer here in the background for us. And he is based in Holland. So just to say that, how excited I am, I hope that we can all be engaging in this conversation with the spirit of learners. We're not so much here to try to teach people, but to learn together how we can continue to learn together to make this truly a thrivable world that fulfills the potential of all humans and, frankly, of all life. So, without further ado, Dina, over to you.
Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you to Global Education Futures. I am very excited to begin this experiment, this effort. And I love what you say about the potential that there is in education to focus our energy where we can. So it's also a choice, right? Where we focus our education. Is it that we want to focus our energy and our capacity and our focus in all the problems that there are, or are we going to focus in something that is possible? It's a choice. So thank you for choosing to focus rather on what is it that we can do together and how can we learn collectively. Can you hear me properly? Yeah, thank you. Thank you also very much to everyone who is with us, to all the teachers, educators, practitioners. I really thank you on behalf of children and youth around the world for making really the effort to make this a better world. And so with that, just to warm up, I would love to invite you to an exercise. It's just to ground us, a brief introduction for us to collectively learn and connect. I would love to invite you to close your eyes for just a brief moment and breathe. And as you're breathing, I want to take an imaginary trip together. So this imaginary trip will take place in a place that we all know, that we were all together in our own paths, and that we will weave. It's a trip to our childhood. So the trip to your childhood, when you're there, I want to ask you about what your favorite game was. Recall what you played, and I will invite the memories to come out by thinking of what was this game about? How did you play it? Were there any materials perhaps in the game? Or did you not need any materials? Where were you? Were you in a playground, in your home? Were you in the park, in a friend's house, at school? Who did you play it with? Were there adults? And if there were adults, what was their role? Most importantly, what do you think you enjoyed most about that game? So with that, you can please open your eyes, come back to 2022, October 6th. And I want you to think about what was this game, and also what skills do you think you learned during this game? Were there any skills at all that you think you gained by playing this game? Maybe, for example, one of my favorite games was playing hide and seek with my brother. And you also had that, Alexander. I can see you nodding. Yeah, probably it's a very very common favorite game as children. And it's also something that there are lots of different games that can connect us throughout our diversity and our backgrounds and our geographies and cultures, which is also something to appeal to, and very, very human. And for example, some of I mean, I would love to see all the games in the chat. Thank you. With your dog. Wow. Okay, that's something wonderful. With your dog, who has your brother. Dogs definitely are family members. I had that experience too. Yes, hide and seek. And I would love to learn what kind of skills do you think were involved? What's something that you learned for hide and seek? A sense of exploring new places, for sure. A sense of adventure, right? What about memory skills? or strategy or collaboration. If you had to, maybe we would play also with my brother, but sometimes we would play with our neighbors. And so we would make teams to hide in teams. The connection with nature, right? If you played near the woods, then that makes it like a very special occasion and brings back really good memories. And also, how do you think of yourself and how do you think of others, right? I know my dog, I know my brother, I know my friend, my sister, I know where they would hide. So they will also know where you hide. So you had to find new places and challenge your creativity, and also be curious about which hidden places they could be in. So which of these skills would you say you still use today in what you do? And that is a very interesting correlation that we have seen over the years, working with lots of amazing, extraordinary teachers. By the way, teachers are our heroes. I'll tell you more about what is it that we do hand in hand with teachers. Yes, also like being, Alexander says, a great way to move between being introverted and stepping forward with others. It's also a whole path, a whole channel, a vehicle to connect and interconnect with others, right? It's very special how this is something that play can do, and this one in particular, hide and seek, it has as well. So what ingredients are important, for example, in play, and more so in more generally, what does it have to do with education? So what I was thinking that apparently nothing to do, but my daughter thread this, she thread this with three different with three different how do you say, with three threads. She made this this necklace, and I was thinking, which are three ingredients that are really key and essential in play and in education and in a peace education. And so I mean, when you play, and it's respect, empathy, and teamwork have come to be really essential for really understanding each other, understanding even what the game is about, right? Just to start. And if we do whatever we want in the game, then it makes no more sense. Yes, respect, empathy, and teamwork, right? So to make it, the game really make sense, and to have fun with others, and to really enjoy and learn together, as you would say, learn collectively. These are very essential characteristics. And so with these three basic ingredients, as a dish that we can prepare together for peace, for an education that really is building a path where we all fit in, where we all can explore, where we all can be ourselves and have the freedom to belong, and are invited to belong, no matter where we're from or where or who we are. This I want to connect this because always when, I mean, there's a misconception about play, right? Where play is maybe like a nice to have or just an extra. But I would invite us all to think about how can we use play to promote an education that really can help us to deliver what we're expected to teach in the academic sense, and also link it to this other aspect of who we are as people, which has to do a lot with peace, with a peace education, right? So this is basically, in a nutshell, what we do in Education for Sharing. I will now share my screen, and I will share in a brief way a practice that has been really my whole life, and that of an extraordinary team for the past 15 years. This year, we are celebrating the first 15 years of education for sharing. And it's really a privilege to share our dream with you, because I'm positive that we share a lot of this. And why for sharing is basically because we have, everybody can participate. It's not for a kind of child or for a kind of teacher or parent or a certain geography or a certain circumstance. It's really an education where we all have a place and a voice and a moment to play together. So basically, I want to share with you, because this is not idealistic. This is not a romantic thought. This is very much something that we have been building and working in a titanic way with an extraordinary team of very diverse backgrounds. 15 years ago, we started this nonprofit, which is basically, it has a very clear mission, which is raising better global citizens through play. And it's really a framework of play, reflect, and take action. So we do use play, that space where we all feel safe and we all feel the possibility to express and to explore, and we have permission and also encouragement to be curious and to nurture our creativity together. But we not only stay in play, we use the experience that we have playing to then invite the participants to come up with a reflection on what we learned, what kind of values were present or not. Sometimes it helps also to see where values were absent and what difference would it make to actually bring them in. I'll share some examples. And then we come up with an action plan. It can be a very simple action around that we learned during play, but it's very meaningful to know that there is something tangible that we can choose to do about what the game was about. So let me share how does it work. We translate abstract concepts like the Sustainable Development Goals, like the greatest global challenges that we know of in the world, right? Inequality, health issues, climate change, poverty, hunger, of course, education. And so these great global challenges usually are or sound very abstract, very far away from us. Many kids, when we start learning about the Sustainable Development Goals, refer to them as, I am very small, and these issues are very big. At first, it's difficult for anyone, of course, even adults, to understand that there is something that we can do about them. But when we play, we realize that these issues are translated into something that I can experience, right? Through play. And so maybe there's a game about gender equity. And so we play in couples. It's called Shadow, and I hope we have the opportunity to play this in person or in a special session that we can organize through Global Education Futures. But imagine Shadow is about having a partner and having a dialogue where we decide together who's going to be the shadow and who's going to guide. And so the guide starts making different movements, and the shadow, of course, follows those movements, right? And so at some point, there is a switch. The person who was shadow then starts guiding, and vice versa. And in the circle of reflection, we think of what are the roles that each one plays. And usually it's played between boys and girls. So couples of a boy and a girl, or and And it's important to notice how we usually think that there are determined roles for a girl or determined roles for a boy. And so it's really fascinating to see that we realize, not because someone told us, but because we experienced it in the game, that we as girls or boys, we could lead and we could guide and we could also follow. And sometimes in leadership, that is also very important. It's not only that a leader is always leading. Sometimes a leader, to be a better leader, also needs to learn how to follow. So there are fascinating experiences that come out of this. And children, and also important to say, teachers and parents have amazing aha moments where it suddenly sinks in. It's not anymore a concept or a theory or something that we should do, but it's something that we realize that we actually care about and that we have something to learn about. And so the action piece, so we already went to play, reflect, and then the take action is an invitation to say, okay, so what was this game about? In the shadow, for example, is about gender equality. And so we made a reflection where we also saw some of the values that were present or not. And then we invite the participants to do something about what they learned today in their home or their school, in their community. And teachers that we work with, when the training is happening and we are going through all these games, because we play to train the teachers, they have to come up with an action after each one of the games. So it can be what seems to be a small action, but makes a huge difference, right? So maybe some children say, okay, we're going to play this game, the shadow, with my neighbors this afternoon. Or sometimes the teacher will say, I'm going to use it for this class in particular, right? So the whole idea, imagine that we can use games like hide and seek or shadow or any game really, that we can adapt it to teach something that is academically required. What difference would it make? What kind of relationships could we develop with our students? And how do you think it could make you feel, and what kind of environment would it create in the class and outside the class? So we translate, going back to our formula or secret sauce, which is not secret at all. We use the power of play to translate these abstract concepts like these global sustainable development goals, also civic values, but civic values in practice again, right? We can talk a lot about respect or empathy or teamwork, collaboration, but really they only matter when they become alive. So a really key way to bring them to life for us has been through play, which is non-threatening, is not through fear, is not in a way that paralyzes, but on the contrary, that really catalyzes. And then, of course, the social emotional skills, right? What happens when you are experimenting a game and you learn that suddenly you feel that something is unfair? What do you do with that? And so it is fascinating to see that children start to learn about identifying what they feel, what emotions come up, and what do they decide to do with those emotions. So it's really a very beautiful and natural way to weave all this experience into one that really informs you of who you are and who you want to be and how you are also in your surroundings, in connection with yourself, with others, and with the greater ecosystem, the system of systems. So we have, this is in a nutshell, what is it that education for sharing is about, very much about global citizenship, about an education for peace, about a sustainable education or education for sustainability. This has many names, right? The 21st century skills. And it's all very much in the same wavelength. So we have been privileged to do this work with literally millions of children, educators, parents from around the world. You will see a map here on the screen, and these are countries that we've operated in. We have worked with over 1.6 million people in very diverse contexts, anywhere from an indigenous shelter in the middle of the mountain range in the north of Mexico, Norogachi, or in Tlacuachislahuaca, Guerrero, again in the middle of the mountains, or in the coast, or in the jungle, or in the city, with mostly underserved communities, very challenged spaces surrounded by violence, poverty, crime. But also, interestingly, we have had also the chance to work with more what are considered like socioeconomic, more privileged backgrounds, and the mothers of those schools, in very few private schools that we've worked with, the mothers tell us, this is where we need most values. This is where we need to really understand in practice the meaning of respect, empathy, teamwork, right? For example. And so we have been we are profoundly grateful in the Education for Sharing team to team up with teachers from the most diverse backgrounds, from, we say, all colors, all smells, all the range of whatever your senses can see, smell, touch, hear. We've had the opportunity to work with, and so here is in a nutshell the values that are always present in our activities, very much again in practice: respect, teamwork, gender equality, empathy, responsibility, tolerance, and fair play. And in connection with the Sustainable Development Goals, which many of you already know, and for those who are new to the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, this is an agenda. It's called the 2030 Agenda, to address the most pressing challenges that we have in the world. And sometimes these are, again, issues, or the 2030 Agenda is something that is considered to be addressed by governments or great companies or businesses. But it's really essential for all of us to know that we have a role to play every day, from today, from wherever we are. And so this is where we come in. We have several programs, all with the last name for sharing. And so we use different disciplines to address better global citizenship from many different perspectives and angles. So through sports, science, art, finance, digital citizenship, equity, nutrition. And I want to highlight two in particular. Grow for Sharing is for early childhood. And initiatives is a component that goes with any one of the other programs, because it's project management for sharing. So kids will go through, for example, sports, and then come up with initiatives. So in initiatives, children, for example, imagine a class that a school that already went through any one of these programs, art for sharing or sports. And so they realize that they actually care, and they understand why do they care about these issues? Why do they care about the great global challenges? Why do they care about practicing civic values? Why do they care about developing their social emotional skills? And so they come up with an initiative. It can be, there have been literally thousands of initiatives. It can be, for example, I'm worried about violence in my community, or I'm worried about people don't know how to use water and they waste it a lot. It can be as diverse as the Sustainable Development Goals. And so kids have to come up with an initiative that they care about, and they make a pitch to their class. And then they democratically vote to choose an initiative that all the class is most excited about. And the initiative that gets the majority of votes, this is a transparent voting session, of course, then the whole class works in that initiative. And at the end of the semester, the whole class presents this initiative to the whole community. So in one of these presentations of initiatives, a girl called, her name was Regina, 9 years old, said that it was the first time in her life that she felt useful and valuable. And so imagine what that means. Imagine what would this world look like, and what does that have to do with peace, by the way, if all of us had an experience that informed us that we have a role to play and that we can make a difference in our communities. There is always something we can contribute as agents of change in our communities. And I think Regina said it best. No, I think that encompasses, it's the best summary of education for sharing. I realized I am useful and I am valuable for my community. So that gave us a lot of hope, and hope in action. Because I know there are many educators with us and practitioners, I'd like to share in a nutshell our implementation model. This can look different in many ways, but maybe a standard way is how this works is we hire local youth that just graduated from local universities, and we train them. And these facilitators accompany educators in any number of schools for 1 school year. So we really go deep. It's not just like we go in and out. We really take a deep dive in every school where we are. And so because these are local facilitators, they really speak the local cultural codes, and they know how to navigate the local system and what are the cultural understandings, etc. And so teachers feel that they have a very important support from these facilitators, and the facilitators have, I think, a very meaningful and rich first job that also informs them about their possibilities, about their potential. And so it's a win-win situation, a very virtuous cycle. Then educators implement the sessions. Every one of the programs that I shared before has a curriculum with a number of sessions, and teachers implement this, and we invite the families, the parents, the grandmas, the tutors, whichever the case might be. And we also invite an ambassador who is, depending on the program, if we're going through sports for sharing, we will invite an athlete ambassador. If we're going through science for sharing, we'll invite a scientist ambassador. It's a person from that discipline, from the community, that shares with kids about their path. It's like an inspiration, motivation model. So they share what kind of values were important in their path to achieve their goals. And it's really eye-opening for the kids, and also for the whole education community. And at the end, we have the community session, or the ambassador session as well, where children become the ambassadors and they lead the activities. So they will lead a whole session of education for sharing, starting with implementing the game, one of the games, explaining what was the sustainable development goal that was present in the game, asking the reflection questions. So asking their parents and the adults in the community what kind of values they lived in the game, what was important and why, or what was missing, right? Explaining about social emotional skills, and also asking the adults So what would they do from today? What is their action plan for today regarding what they learned in that game? So it's like a full cycle. We also measure of course, it's very important to evaluate what happens, what are the results, what is being learned. And these are some examples of indicators: violence awareness, civic duty, gender equality. And we see dramatic changes for good, thankfully, in this work. And we have very important testimonials. We have the quantitative side, but also we have the qualitative side, where for example, a student from 4th grade in Argentina, Alexander says, if I see someone bothering another person at school, I would approach them in order to reach a reconciliation, because we don't need fights. We must respect each other. So it's like searching for that dialogue. No, these games, the most important thing is that they have a life after the games. The games are just like a fertile ground where all the seeds that you planted can then keep on growing. And so if we really translate education through play that has a meaning and a sense, and that really is something that kids care about, and they understand why they care about this, then it has a very important longevity. So this is just in a nutshell. I know we have to go to the next stage, but I just wanted to share that very briefly, and thank you very much for being here. I would love to learn from you and what your thoughts are, your questions, your reflections. And if we have time, I'd like to share a very brief video so that you can listen to the voices of the communities that go through this education for sharing model. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dina. Amazing practice. I think it would be valuable if we can share the video. Do you prefer the first one, education for sharing, we form better global citizens?
Sure.
Okay,
yes,
let me try to share it.
Thank you.
Just a moment. Sorry. We are experimenting, like I said, so.
It's perfect.
Aprendí a juego limpio, al respeto y a cuidar higiene.
Es que nos enseñan valores así a respetar a nuestros amigos o trabajar en equipo.
Equidad de género, juego limpio, trabajo en equipo.
Fue algo muy divertido. Fuimos y estuvimos jugando, nos hicimos del proyecto, nos presentaron cada una de las sesiones y pues si a nosotros nos encantó, pues más a los niños.
Me parece genial, es uno de los mejores proyectos bien hechos que nos trajeron a la escuela. Puedes estar jugando mientras aprendes cosas, como por ejemplo que se puede cocinar sin uso de electricidad y saber que con cosas tan sencillas como papel y agua se pueden crear cosas extraordinarias.
A todos los niños les gusta jugar y yo creo que jugando se aprende más porque se están divirtiendo y aparte se están aprendiendo algo.
Pues son ejemplos que nos dieron para transmitir a los niños para que dentro de un futuro más adelante sean niños de valor, que sean niños respetuosos, que sean niños que logren su meta, que logren lo que es su sueño.
Esos valores y muchos más nos van a hacer para ser buenas personas.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. And I'm sorry. So just wanted to say that I think what you're doing is amazing. And reflecting also on something that I've been going through in the last couple of days. Right now I'm in Berlin teaching students that are focusing on sustainability and transition to a sustainable economy. And with that course, we actually started with a simulation of that transition to a new paradigm. And it really resonated with me how you present your work, because actually what we discussed in the last couple of days is that play allows you to model behaviors that may not yet exist in the community, in the wider community. But the play actually invites you to try these behaviors and see that it's beneficial to really kind of hold to them, to learn them, to manifest them. So play is a space of possibilities. It moves us from the place of what is to what could be, can be, and will be. And I really enjoyed this, and I will certainly have some questions specifically about education for peace, but let me first of all pass to Alexander.
Wow, this is great. You know, life is to be celebrated. And so often education is, at least has been in the past, even involving corporal punishment. It's solemn, it's strict, pay attention, sit up straight, don't, oh my goodness. And then all the joy leaves, the joy of living, the joy of life. And then things become objects, people become objects, people become objects, life becomes a problem to be solved. We look at problem-based everything instead of celebrating each other. So this is really fantastic, that the joy of learning brings us into the joy of life, brings us into connection with each other. This is life. So thank you for the spirit of celebration. I put a little quote there in our chat there from Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, smiling is very, because I looked in the video, everyone is smiling and they're often laughing, but the video was full of smiles in an educational context. And Thich Nhat Hanh says, smiling is very important. If we're not able to smile, then the world will not have peace. It is not by going out for demonstration against nuclear missiles that we can bring about peace. It is with our capacity of smiling, breathing, and being peace that we can make peace. Again, that's from Thich Nhat Hanh. So I think what you are doing, Dina, is right on. And I have some questions for you. Let me just not speak too much, because I want to hear more from you and see who else is here to share. So 2 questions. One is about how this relates perhaps to Buckminster Fuller's world game. Buckminster Fuller's world game. That looked a little bit like also that some of the things they were learning when you were describing the world game, and it seemed like they were getting to know the resources and things of that sort. And I don't know if that was ever an inspiration for the things you're doing, or if there's any relationship to that. So that's one question. And the other is simply, there are terms in education now. There's gamification. There is edutainment. And some people don't like either of these. And they like to talk about playification. How do you see these things? And is there a term that you prefer?
Thank you so much. I think the inspiration, I mean, we all have our personal stories, right? And I think it's really important to go to our whys and to understand what our purpose is. How do we connect to that larger purpose, right? It's we always say, like, this is so fun and so meaningful and so transcendental because it's beyond ourselves. It's not because of me, it's because of us. And so one of the things about the inspiration, I think I've thought a lot about this, and there were two main sources of inspiration. I think a good one can be the one that you're sharing. But I think it's one, my four grandparents escaped from discrimination from Europe. Three of my grandparents were Polish and one was from Ukraine. She escaped from the pogroms, and they arrived in Mexico and Uruguay, my four grandparents. And so I think this has always been a source of reflection and of meaning for me. Of course, I am not an outlier. This is a world of migration and refugees, and always having to search for a place to live, to survive, and then to hopefully live. But it really informed the way that I see the world. And as you say, Pavel, in the beginning, the root causes. What are the root causes of the state of the world that we live in? And how can we address them in a way that also dignify us as people? And so I think no human being should ever have to escape to be free or to grow up in a safe space. And then, so that's also very much why education for sharing. And the other one was my own experience going to school, right? Which was, as you described, Alexander, very rigid. No, I think, and again, not an outlier experience where I had to copy a lot from the blackboard and take dictation and be quiet. And honestly, I mean, most children actually need to move to learn. It's just in our nature. It's just, we need to move to learn and to be active and to connect and to listen, and but also to express in different ways. And so it just going to, as I was growing up, I went to a movement similar to the Scouts, and this was on Saturdays, and it really informed me also that education, formally or informally, doesn't need to be as we know it. We can really reimagine and be bold and be courageous and play to learn at school. So that's why I also was very excited to try this kind of education in schools. And guess what? It works. So that's the one. And then you mentioned the playification, like what's the, yeah, that's a great question. I think it's just making education more human, just relevant and human, and something that really relevant, because the education as we know it, as you know, was thought more for the Industrial Revolution, and at that time maybe made sense. That also something to debate, but certainly it doesn't make sense anymore, and certainly it doesn't prepare us for the world that we have today, and for the world that we will keep on discovering. So I think just I would name it like a human relevant education.
Dina, so teachers that watch us start to send their questions, and I think it's also a good time to start weaving in larger audience. And the question that is asked, I think, is very relevant, because when we discuss sustainable development goals, when we discuss our peace-based possibility, it's not only about making peace between humans, but we really are kind of, in this civilization, is kind of waging war or ripping off our beautiful planet. In not everyone, but I guess there are lots of these systems, industrial systems, and technologies that are kind of not very friendly, let's say. And we are now challenged to start learning to live in coherence with nature and respect the world around us. So the question to you: how can we ensure students to help them learn that capacity to live in coherence with nature?
Thank you so much for your question from that teacher. I don't know his or her name, but thank you so much. I think it's an essential one, right? Is threading through the connection of as a person, as a community, and in the planet. How do we make sure that there is a harmony to and that very fragile balance? So I think in terms of nature, again, how can you love it if you don't live it? No, how can you understand it? How can you respect it if you don't? For example, when we walk through trees, next to trees, we have usually, most people don't have any idea of what the names of the trees are. So I think that is how disconnected we are. No, like many kids today don't know where their food is coming from. They think food comes from a supermarket or a box. And so these are very silly examples, but very key ones, right? That allow us to see just the size of the disconnect. And so one of the, again, focusing on what we can do, one of the very low-hanging fruits, to go back with the fruit concept, is to experience more play in nature. How can we weave through all of this continuum so that it's not a siloed concept? It's all the same, right? It's how do you interact with nature? How are you able to play and feel with all your senses, feel, smell, hear what the nature has to say, and integrating that into everyday life so that it's not like a special activity. It's like an activity that we have as human beings living on this planet. So it's not really rocket science we're talking about. It's something very concrete, tangible. Is talking about our human nature again. Thank you. Thank you to Lika from the class, from 11th grade teacher. Yes, and I can share some examples of games that we play, for example, around the sinking island. No, it's the sink, and there are many examples of games that we play in regards to the planet and nature, but maybe for another time. I'd love to learn more of your questions.
Let me first of all ask maybe a question that relates also to your experience of your ancestry. Part of the motivation to start our talks with talk about global citizenship and particular peace is that we now see a very large war happening in Europe, and a war that is not only happening in the region, but potentially through lethal weapons that are involved in the war can kind of begin affecting other regions, if not the whole world. So everybody is very concerned about risks. In particular, Ukraine is being hurt by this war, and tens of thousands of people dying, including young children. This is a terrible tragedy.
Yes.
And question is perhaps education, well, at least like I am as educator, find myself helpless in such circumstances. What can I do? It's already happening, and I can teach somebody, but it's like it still requires some time to transit into like different behaviors. So probably teachers often find themselves helpless in face of such human tragedies. But to avert wars in the future, like what are our best pathways as teachers? How do we root that idea of possibility of global peace? And what is, in your opinion, the best, let's say, approach that really conveys this idea and teaches the younger generation to really learn to live peacefully?
It's a big question. I don't think there is one answer. I think we all have to provide an answer that really resonates and is possible for us. I think we all have ways to contribute to this peace education. In our case, I think it's very clear with Education for Sharing, like how we do it. I mean, I can say I would love to see, a dream is to see all education systems use play to translate not only to teach about peace, but to live peace, to understand empathy in the most practical sense of the word, like how you see the effect of our actions and our conduct, our behavior, and the omissions of our behaviors as well, the effects that we can have in others. When you see that in a very practical way, I think it's like a very profound source of information that translates into practice. That's why, I mean, I think play is very profound, but it's also very practical. It's also very simple. It's complex and simple simultaneously. And so that's what I love about it. I think we need to stay at it. We can't give up. We can't give up because it's not about us. Again, it's about the children the children are definitely, yes, they are the future, but they're also here today. They're the present, right here, right now. So we can't disaggregate that fact. And that's why I think it's so important that we nurture more and more. We get together, we team up, we really commit together. We learn collectively and commit together to a different kind of education that we can all benefit from. And that speaks to aspects like war that you just mentioned now. And it's not that we will end war today because we're playing, but we can prepare the ground, and we must start at some point in time, or else it will continue happening. We want to stop the playbooks in history that we know so well, that are repeated over and over again. We need to go to the root, like you said, and the root, I mean, in my humble opinion, is education, a different kind of education. Also, I mean, in terms of mental health, many of us know about the terrible tragedy that happened in Thailand. I saw a question from one of the teachers, Reka, from 9th grade. And I mean, where is the humankind heading? I think those are examples of people that are that unfortunately have lost their mind, right? And that are very ill. Someone that kills people in a shooting, this is in a daycare in Thailand today. Many people were killed, including 22 children, with a knife and gun in a daycare center. And then, so these are things that it's not that these things, terrible, extremely dramatic things that happen, we can't just make as if they don't exist. They do exist, but we need to counteract this kind of violence and also mental health issues with something that, again, we collectively commit to and learn for. And so it's in schools and beyond schools that we can learn how to detect that we all need attention, and we all need connection, and we all need to learn about how we feel valuable for others. And I think those are great antidotes to prevent. It's a matter of prevention. It's a matter of prevention. I mean, that's what I think a different kind of education can help us thrive and prevent from this kind of terrible things that are happening. It's not we can't, they say we can't cover the sun with a finger, right? But we also can't only focus on that.
Thank you. These are sobering realities, right? And my sense from what it is that you're sharing, and it goes right with one of the next questions that have come up, but just to share with you that my sense of what is going on here, that you're bringing into focus, into attention for us, is the true act of bravery, that is being able to maintain our humanity and to find hope and to create the conditions that allow children not to live only in fear that there's going to be another shooting. Look, yes, these things happen in the full array. It's not just, oh, it happens and too bad. And yes, we must take all kinds of actions as well to try to prevent and counter that with laws and with security measures. And the deeper healing comes from learning with hope, learning the bravery of being able to play, to rejoice, to not lose the celebration of life. I think in terms of what Pablo was saying at the beginning about the roots, this is the education for life. Because if we become just fearful and we live only by trying to protect and then to attack the attackers, we're not going to change the game. And so the ways of being able to engage, the question, what would love do in any situation? Almost personifying, what would love do now when this happened? And that's a game as well. What would love do? What would life do? What would nature do? And this takes us out of being the victims and saying, okay, and this is what you have here, right? Play, reflect, take action. And this is at the core of the program. So to share with you then the question from Sahil of the 10th grade in India is asking, how do we move from I to we, which is extremely important to live in peace and be compassionate humans?
That is the question, right? I love your question, Sahil. Thank you so much. And those kids from the 10th grade with you are very lucky. So I think that's the question, and we need to keep conquering the answers to that. I don't think there is one answer. Again, I think it's a constant exercise of conquering these values. It's not because I was empathetic once or we teamed up once that this value is mine. And that, I think, is the invitation of the happy challenge of values. You have to keep on conquering them. Every day, in every situation, in every human interaction, there is a civic lesson, an opportunity to be a better person. So I think the more we have opportunities as children of any age to realize that we have a purpose, I think that is when, and a purpose that makes life better for someone else, or that makes a difference for someone else, for one person, or for a community, or for a country, or for the planet, or for a species. I think that is when we have one of the first, in my mind, is one of the first experiences that allows us to go from I to we, that allows us to really connect with a beyond me, with why do we care? What motivates us to wake up every day? Where are we putting our attention, and why? And our focus and our energy and our love, as you said, Alexander, where it's a decision. It's a decision, but the more we enable spaces and moments for hopefully younger ones to experience this, like Regina, the 9-year-old girl, who said, this is the first time in my life I feel valuable. I think this is when we go from I to we. This is one of the, at least one of the ways.
That's so wonderful, Dina. And wonderful questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and engaging and making this interactive and playing with us. We're now at the end of our session, so I'll just make a comment and pass it to Pavel to wrap up. But Dina, thank you so much. I think the essence of sharing is, you can't do that with only I can't share by myself, right? So there needs to be the we in sharing. It's a requisite. You can't share by yourself. So this approach to education that is focused on sharing is not only an acknowledgement, but a way of engaging in the recognition that we are all interconnected. We are all interconnected. What happened in Thailand, what is going on now in other parts of the world, this is not separate from us. And we have a choice. How do we show up? How can we learn to be better humans? I like to put the word into a verb. How do we learn to human well? And how do we learn to human well together? So I think what you have shared with us today has to do not only with lifelong learning, which at Global Education Futures, we're very much focused on that issue, but we also bring in the context of life-wide learning. And life-wide learning has to do with full spectrum humaning, right? How do we learn not just the topics in the classroom, but we learn about life, about nature, about love, about sharing, about what it means to be human. And also this comes from the negative things when we learn what happened in Thailand, but maybe not in the direct way for the children at least, but we must learn from that as well. So all of this is learning, life is learning, and we can do that with joy, with hope, fundamentally with hope. So thank you so much. This is the path to peace. Pavel.
Oh, thank you, Dina. You're doing amazing work in the world, and I'm very touched. I leave this space very touched, and I hope this gathering today really inspired a lot of teachers to follow your path, to step into the world, to explore with children, to begin learning in new ways. And I want to share one thing that I learned today from you is this shining your light no matter what, doing your thing, knowing that, in the end, things that you're doing are right things, they will prevail. So thank you very much for doing it. And I think this is a big, big lesson for all of us. And I hope we will meet in other spaces, and hopefully also a lot of these teachers who asked their questions today, really inspiring and deep questions, will be also interested to learn from you in practice. So that is something to come. And thank you, and everyone who is listening to us, have a great day today, and come to next Global Education Futures Talks. They will happen at the end of October, and then will be happening every month. So you're more than welcome. Thank you, Dina, to be our pilot guest. This was incredible.
Thank you so much. What an honor, and until soon. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias y amor. Y paz.
Y amor. Amén. Gracias.